Elnecave, Elnecave. I was originally born in Texas. I grew up in a farm town in Iowa, of all places in God's green earth. Then I went to college at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee, proving to you that I am in fact an enormous nerd. After Vanderbilt, I moved briefly to Berkeley, California, where I then proceeded to drop out of grad school and work at Starbucks, where I was inspired by a cholo named Carlos to move to Mexico to teach English as a second language in a Jewish day school. After teaching English as a second language in a Jewish day school for 3 years, I ended up meeting my husband and moving to Israel. And since I've been living in Israel for 10 years, we have 4 kids. We live in Givat Shaul in the middle of Jerusalem, and I teach at Neve. Okay, so I'm really famous for my incredible, amazing artwork, and I was going to write all over the whiteboard. The people who've been to Neve are like, yep, there's ridiculous drawing going to happen. But for some reason, it's not letting me open my whiteboard right now. I don't know why. Okay. Yes! What? Baby? Come here. Okay. Once upon a time, let's see if I can get this to go. We are just going to write over a blank email. Okay, friends? Okay, great. So, once upon a time, in a land not so far away, there was a dude. Okay, now first off, as you can see, I am an incredibly talented artist. Okay, so bear with me. Okay, and this whole class is going to be some stories. Okay, I once heard a rabbi say that non-Jewish people tell their kids stories to put them to sleep, but Jewish people tell their kids stories to wake them up. So once upon a time, in a land not so far away from me, basically because it happened here, there was a dude named Akiva, okay? And like all good Jews in stories, Akiva was a, wait for it, shepherd, okay? Mad skills with the art. Okay, so Akiva was a shepherd. Now, he's out there chilling in the fields, doing his shepherd thing, and he is 40 years old. Has anybody here ever heard of a 40-year-old dude named Akiva? Cool. You've probably heard some of this story before, right? He's 40 years old, and what's the fun fact about him? I feel like Dora sometimes up in here, like, Rabbi Akiva.
Do you want to turn on our mics and answer or no?
There's like 30 of you.
Yeah, I was wondering that too.
Yeah, because then it's like let's all just do this like we're on Blue's Clues, and I will ask questions and you can yell the answer in your living room. I'll pause and then I'll be like, great, good job. Okay, and then we'll all move forward. Okay, so Rabbi Akiva is 40 years old, and you're right, he doesn't know anything. Okay, he knows absolutely no Torah. Okay, right? So Rabbi Akiva is out in the field doing his thing, and then one fine day, this girl comes walking down the road. Her name is Rachel, and we don't know a whole lot about Rachel, but we know a couple facts. Number one, we know that Rachel was stunningly beautiful, okay? Stunningly gorgeous. And also she comes from mad cash, okay? Her dad was so rich that they called him basically like overfed dog man, because even the dogs in his house were overfed because this guy was rolling in it so much. Okay, so Rachel comes walking down the street, and what she does, which is totally wild, is wake up my son. No, just kidding. And there goes his dad. Okay, so Rachel is walking down the street, and she sees Akiva, this 40-year-old shepherd, and she says, hey, if I were to marry you, would you go and a cat? Okay, welcome to Teaching in Zoom. Okay. Would you go learn Torah? Hi, Akiva. So, like, if I were to, like, marry you, would you, like, go learn the Torah? What? What? Like, you're young, you're hot, you got cash, and you see some 40-year-old shepherd, and you're like, hey, dude, want to get married and go learn Torah? Like, what is her move here? The Gemara doesn't tell us a lot, but what it does tell us is she saw 3 things in Akiva that motivated her to do this. Thing number 1, she saw that Akiva was humble, always a good trait. She saw that Akiva was wise in his own way, and she saw that he was dedicated. Okay, so she sees these 3 things and ends up making this insane offer. Today's class is called How to Be Insanely Successful in 3 easy steps. And what she saw in Akiva is going to be your first step to success. Because Rabbi Akiva was incredibly dedicated. He was incredibly diligent. Now, if this had been made as a Hollywood movie, right? And she was like, wow, that Akiva guy, he needs to become a scholar. It would have been all good when hunting or something, right? He would have been doing calculus on a rock, or he would have been like learning German in his free time or something, right? He would have been insanely intelligent. But the first key to success is knowing success isn't a function of intelligence. Success is a function of diligence. It's not about how smart you are. It's about how hard are you willing to work. Okay? And this is something that we see like in other places as well, other than the story of Rabbi Akiva. You guys ever heard of Malcolm Gladwell? He writes nonfiction books, okay? Like, he wrote a book called Outliers, which is the story of success. And he talks about a lot of different theories in that book. But one of the more interesting theories he talks about is something called the 10,000 hour rule. Okay, and the 10,000 hour rule says, basically, if you dedicate yourself to doing something for 10,000 hours, you can become a world master at it. Okay, where did they get this? Did they just pull this out of their sleeve? No, it's based on a study that was done at the Berlin Conservatory with violinists. Okay, they did a study of violinists at the Berlin Conservatory, and they basically asked them, over the course of your career, calculate how many hours of dedicated practice have you put in, okay? And they noticed a trend. Basically, any violinist who put in between 6,000 and 7,000 hours of dedicated practice throughout the course of their career was good enough to be a teacher. Any violinist who put in between 8,000 and 9,000 hours over the course of their career was good enough to become a member of an orchestra. But any violinist who hit this threshold of 10,000 hours of dedicated practice was a world master. And the really interesting part was they noticed that there were no world masters who had not reached 10,000 hours of practice, and there was no one who had reached 10,000 hours of practice and had not become a world master. You see, talent was enough to get them started on the journey, but talent wasn't enough to make them successful. The only thing that made them successful was how hard they were willing to work. Okay? And we also see this in the Torah world. Okay? In our world, there is the biggest rabbi today. Okay? The biggest rabbi in the world is Rav Chaim Kanievsky. He's almost 100 years old. He lives in a city called Bnei Brak near Tel Aviv, and he is considered the world expert on Torah. Okay? There's nothing that he does not know. He is the world expert on Torah. So his dad was also a very important rabbi, the Stifler. Okay? And when Rav Chaim was in about 4th grade, in what must have been the world's most awkward parent-teacher conference, okay, Rav Chaim's 4th grade teacher calls in the stifler and is like, we need to have a talk about your son, Chaim. Chaim he's failing the 4th grade. Okay, he's failed every single one of the tests. He doesn't really get it, and well, like maybe the Torah thing just really isn't for your son. And the discipler looks this 4th grade teacher in the eye and he says, what are you basing that on? What do you do? You present a concept in class, and then maybe you go over it 3 or 4 times, and then maybe the students get to go over it 5 or 6 times before you give the test? Yeah, you're right. My son, Chaim, will never, ever understand a concept if he only sees it 10, 15, 20 times. Nope, he won't. He'll fail every one of those tests. You see, for my son Chaim to understand something, he's probably going to have to see it about 40 or 50 times. See, but what you don't know about my son is that my son will sit there and he'll go over it 40 or 50 times until he understands it. And then he's going to know it better than anyone else. And that's exactly what happened. You see, Rav Chaim, for the past 80 plus years, 80 plus years, every single year has finished the entire Talmud Bavli, the entire Talmud Yerushalmi, the Shulchan Aruch, the Torah, and a bunch of books that I can't even remember the names of. And he finishes them every single year and has finished them every year for 80 years. Today, Rav Chaim is the world expert on Torah. And those kids that got A's in the 4th grade, well, I don't know who they are. Because it's not about how fast you are. It's not about how intelligent you are. It's not about how quickly you understand something. It's about how hard are you willing to work to become successful and incredible at it. So what does Rachel see in Rabbi Akiva, in Akiva, the shepherd? She sees that he's got this dedication. Okay, so she basically goes up to him and she's like, so, if I were to like marry you, would you like go learn Torah? And Rabbi Akiva's response is basically, yep, yes, I would. I would do that. But before we go into Rabbi Akiva starting his process, let's all take a moment here and ask the question. Why is he 40 years old and knows nothing? What? He doesn't know how to read. Okay, he is illiterate. Which ironically, I might be spelling wrong right now. Like, I have a lot of good qualities. I can't spell. Okay, so he's illiterate, right? So how is this guy at 40 years old and doesn't even know how to read? In the times he was living, right, Hebrew was the spoken language. So it's not like he has to learn a second language, okay? In the times that he was living, literacy is something that's characterized the Jewish people pretty much since the beginning, right? At least the Aleph Bet, at least the ABCs would have been something that was accessible to pretty much anyone, even if they were poor, even if they came from a complicated family background, even Rabbi Akiva's dad is actually a convert, interestingly enough. So we know his dad was probably pretty gung-ho about the whole thing, right? So we know that he could have had access to the basics. It was actually really surprising that somebody would end up being 40 years old and not know at least how to read, or at least like a little bit of Torah. That's kind of strange. So what could be the reason that Rabbi Akiva doesn't know anything? It's not because he was poor. It's not because his dad was a convert. It's not anything except Rabbi Akiva, at this point just Akiva, legit hated rabbis. He hated rabbis. He hated everything to do with rabbis. He hated the rabbinical establishment. So much so that the Gemara says that it says he wished he was a donkey so he could donkey bite them, which I feel like is a sick burn. Like, I hate your face so much, I want to donkey bite you, right? Like, he hated rabbis. He didn't want anything to do with them, okay? So when Rachel comes up and she's like, I'll marry you, but you got to go hang out with rabbis. Like, he was like, no, all right, fine, okay? So they end up getting married, and her dad is so angry that this girl ends up marrying like the illiterate 40-year-old shepherd that he basically totally cuts her off. And they are poor, living in a barn while Rabbi Akiva is going to the local kindergarten and sitting on the little chairs and learning his ABCs. Okay? They are so poor that they're basically living in a straw pile. And one night, somebody comes and knocks on the door, and he's like, hi, so I heard you guys are really rich, and you have a straw pile. So we're really poor, and my wife's about to give birth, and we don't really have any straw to put down. Do you think that you could, like, you know, give us some straw for my wife? And Rachel at this point is like, wait a minute. There are people poorer than us? Akiva, we gotta up our game. Akiva, we gotta go big or go home. Like, we need to up our game here. I want you to go, and I want you to dedicate yourself full time to learning. I want you to go to the yeshiva for 12 years. Go big or go home. Okay? So Rabbi Akiva heads out to go to the yeshiva for 12 years. And when he gets there, right, he starts learning, and he is that super intense student. Do you guys know that super intense student? They usually sit in the front row of the class, right? Their hand lives perpetually in the air, and they're like, excuse me, I have a question. Excuse me, I have a question. Excuse me, what does this mean? Excuse me, could you write that on the board? Excuse me, do you have any extra reading we could do? Excuse me, is this gonna be on the test? Right, we all know that person. I am that person, okay? So don't hate me. Like I told you, big nerd, giant nerd, okay? So he ends up being a super, super duper intense student and inspired by a pretty face. Okay, we're gonna be real honest. He was inspired by a pretty face and also somebody really believing in him. Believing in someone is kind of addicting. Like when somebody sees that, like, wow, you think I should do things? Oh, that's cool, right? So he was inspired by Rachel, but by the time he gets to yeshiva, you know that person, okay, there's one person who in the classroom is like the super nerd in the front row, and then there's like the trick, the rabbi, I'm gonna bring down the whole establishment human. You ever met that person? They come to the class and they're like, well, what about this? And what about that?
Yeah.
So he was absolutely that guy.
Oh, okay.
He was on one hand super interested because like he'd never learned anything, but on the other hand, like he still was kind of like, who says? Like, where'd you get that from? Like he was like challenging them basically on every letter out there. They were like, hey, you want to go to school? And he was like, no, I hate rabbis. They were like, hey, you want to go to synagogue and learn to read? No, I'd rather bite that rabbi in the face than learn anything from him. Like, do you want to like learn the Shema? No, I don't wanna. That was basically his attitude, was I want nothing to do with this and I don't want anything. I don't want to learn. And that's how he ended up being ignorant at 40. Okay, so he's chilling in yeshiva, right? And he's headed out. And he's basically going against the rabbis all the time, constantly asking questions and constantly challenging them. Until one point, one of the rabbis was like, yo, Akiva, let me tell you what you're like. And he uses something called a mashal. Okay? A mashal is a parable or a symbolic story. Okay? A parable or a symbolic story. Okay, so what this is I'm going to tell you a story, and every part of the story represents something, okay? So once upon a time, in the mountains, there was a woodcutter. Okay, and the woodcutter every day would take his little like hammer. Oh, that's a really big hammer. Okay, he would take his hammer and he'd go out and he would go out to the mountain and strike it with his hammer and chip away. He was chipping away thin chips of stone. Okay, so he's chipping away and 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 chipping away. Until one day the people of the town come and they're like, what you doing? And the woodcutter says, I'm chipping away at this mountain. I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to throw it into the river. And the people of the town are like, okay. So he keeps chipping away and 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 chipping away until he comes to this giant boulder, chips underneath it, picks up the mountain, and throws it into the river. The end. Okay, now, if this is a symbolic story, that means that every single one of these elements is representative. Okay, so, and they were talking about Akiva. So here we go. Woodcutter. What do we think the woodcutter represents? We're going to do this like Blue's Clues. Ready? What do we think the woodcutter represents, kids? You're right! Rabbi Akiva! Good job! Okay, what do we think the mountain represents? You're right! The Torah! What do we think picking up the mountain and throwing it in the river represents? Learning the Torah! Oh, but I forgot one. What do we think the thin chips of stone represent? His questions. First out, shout out to every single one of you who I can see actually shouting the answers out in your living room. You get an A+ for participation. Well done. Okay, now that is one way to read the story. That Rabbi Akiva's many questions basically gave him the ability to learn the Torah, ta-da. But there's a second way to read this, okay? There's a second way to read this. You have to know that anytime water shows up in one of these symbolic stories, okay, water is always going to represent Torah. Okay, so in a second way to read this story, water represents Torah. So this is still Akiva, right? These are still his questions. But if the river represents the Torah, so then what does the mountain represent? Okay? If Akiva is still the woodcutter, and the thin chips of stone are still his questions, but throwing the mountain in the river represents the Torah, throwing the mountain in the Torah, then what's the mountain? What could the mountain represent in this story if it doesn't represent Torah? I'll make it easy for you. Here's Akiva. Here's the Torah. Here's the mountain. Here's Akiva. Here's the Torah. Here's a mountain. Okay? In between Rabbi Akiva and the Torah, there's a mountain. So what does the mountain represent? The mountain represents his big, fat block. What is holding him back? So step number 2 to be insanely successful. Okay, step number 1 is diligence. Sorry, hold on. Step number 1, remember, just review, it's diligence, not intelligence. And step number 2 of being insanely successful is you have to know what holds you back is you. I just told you guys the key to being insanely successful. It is doing something for 10,000 hours. Why are we not all insanely successful? What holds us back? Okay, so there is this thing. We all have voices in our head. And I don't necessarily mean this in like a beautiful mind kind of way. I mean, we all have these voices in our heads that talk to us all the time. I will give you a perfect example of when you can hear one. Let's say you are chilling on your couch, okay? You've got a beverage, you're laying on your couch, you're watching some Netflix. You've been watching Netflix on your couch for about a solid 5 hours at this point. Okay, we're at the point where Netflix is no longer asking if we want a new episode. It's just starting it. And it's like, dude, are we watching the intro? Yes or no? Right? And as you cruise into your 5th or 6th hour of Netflix, you will hear a voice come flitting through your head that says, dude, you should go do something. And immediately, another voice will come out of the basement of your consciousness and go, but I'm like so tired. I'll get up in 5 minutes. Right after this episode, I'm gonna do that. Say hello to my daughter. Miriam Leah.
I woke up just now.
I know you woke up just now. Could you please go with Abba?
Sorry, I was with the other one.
Okay. Hi. Miriam Leah, go with Abby, please. At the end, you can come say hello, okay? It's 6:30 and we're all waking up. Okay, so there's this other voice in your head that's like, no, I'll do it in a minute. In fact, there's this voice, this debate will start between the two voices, right? One will be like, seriously, dude, you have stuff to do. And the other one will be like, I'm really tired. In fact, this debate will go on so much that you will need to pee and you will have a debate with yourself about whether or not you want to get up and go to the bathroom, right? Like, you need to pee. I can wait. It's 2 feet from here. I don't, like, right? You'll be in a debate. This only happens to me. Like, right? You have this debate in your head. Who are these voices? Who is this having this conversation? In Judaism, those voices have a name. Okay, one of them is called your Yetzer Hara, and one of them is called your Yetzer Hatov. Okay, Yetzer means inclination. Okay, Ra means bad. Tov means good, like Mazel Tov. Okay, so, and if you've ever heard of these before, you probably picture it something along the lines of like the little angel and the little devil from the cartoons, right? Right? Your Yetzer Hara coming along and being like, hey man, let's go carjack people. And your Yetzer Hatov being like, no, let's go donate to charity, right? No, that is not how these work at all, okay? Your Yetzer Hara very rarely spends any time telling you to go do something bad, okay? Instead, what your Yetzer Hara really is more or less the voice of the status quo. The voice of the comfort zone. It is a voice that wants you to stay where you are. It is the voice that is resistant to change. It is the voice that is seeking comfort, okay? This is the, don't, dude, just chill. Just chill, man. Just chill. It's that voice. The other hand, your Yetzer Hatov, your other voice, what is it? This is the voice of change and growth, right? The comfort zone is a beautiful place, but absolutely nothing grows there, right? So in our lives, we're gonna listen to one of these. We definitely don't wanna listen to this one. And we definitely do want to listen to this one. We want to listen to the voice of change and growth. We want to listen to the voice that's pushing us to achieve our destiny and our dreams. But how do I know who's who? How do I know who's talking to me? Because I want to listen to one and I want to ignore the other. Rav Dessler says, it's very easy to know which one's which. Your Yetzer Hara and your Yetzer Tov always speak to you in a certain way. Your Yetzer Hara always speaks to you from the voice of I. And your Yetzer Tov always speaks to you from the voice of you. If we want to be more technical, first person and second person. Okay? And you can hear this in your own head, right? I can't do this. I'm not smart enough for this. I'm not strong enough for this. I'm such a failure. I'm going to screw this up again. I screw up everything. I'm such a waste. I'm a loser. I can't. It's a voice that we hear in our head, loud, constant, especially for the majority of the people in this call who are female. We are societally trained to have this one on stereo. Okay? I can't do this. But then there's another little voice that like creeps up out of the basement and that's like, you can do it. You're awesome. Go you. You can get off the couch, right? Okay? Basically, we have this internal voice, which is sort of a hater, right? The I, which is over here hating on us, basically never telling us that we like go do something bad, basically just telling us we can't do anything worthwhile. But then we also have this inner voice, which is like our inner, you guys ever heard of a hype friend? Right? That friend that like loves you and thinks you're awesome, right? You put a selfie on Instagram, she is absolutely that first comment, and she comments like, fire heart, fire icon, fire emoji, fire emoji, fire emoji, yes, queen, right? She'll like your stuff like 12 times, right? You're getting ready to go out, you know, and you're like doing your whatever you're doing, right? And you're sitting there and you look at yourself in your mirror and you're like, oh my gosh, I am so ugly. I'm so horrible. Oh, I hate my face, right? And your hype friend is like laying on your bed or whatever, and then all of a sudden she's just like, girl, you are stunning. You're beautiful. You're amazing. You're like Instagram influencer hot. You're amazing. I want to cut off your skin and wear it because I love you so much. You're fantastic. You are amazing. What do you say? You are my everything. Right? Hype friend. First off, if you are a hype friend, we need more of you in the world. Second off, if you have a hype friend, say thank you and appreciate that. If you don't have a hype friend, go find yourself one. But we have a hype friend in our head who is constantly trying to tell us how incredible we are. But you know what choice is louder? The I. The I is so incredibly loud that, like, let's say you're going to write a term paper, okay? You're in grad school and you have to sit down and you got to write a paper. You open up your laptop, right? And you're like, oh, I can't do this. Oh, I didn't do enough research. Oh my gosh, I am such a bad writer. Oh, that sentence is awful. Like, I can't do, it's just sure. It's this screaming voice. You have to do everything for 10,000 hours. But to start that, you have to push back constantly against this voice of negativity in your head that doesn't want you to even start. That for the first 5 to 10 minutes that you try to do anything new in your life will be beating against you, being like, no, I can't, right? And I'll tell you, like, have you guys ever tried to do those like affirmations in the mirror, right? You decided to become like really, you know, woke and really spiritual. And so you like do those affirmations in the mirror where you're supposed to look at yourself in the mirror and be like, I am worthy. And it feels insanely awkward. And you're like, I am beautiful. And there's a little voice that's like, no, I'm not. It's because you're speaking to yourself in the wrong voice. What you have to do instead is you have to look at yourself and you have to say, you are worthy. You are so beautiful. You're incredible. You're smart. You're talented. You are amazing. We all need this hype friend in our head. So what was Rabbi Akiva's whole struggle? What's this mountain that he's chipping away at for 12 years? It wasn't just learning the material. It was chopping away question by question, day by day, at his own understanding of who he was. He was chopping away at a big fat block of I. I am 40 years old. I don't know anything. I don't even care. I don't even like these guys. I'm not like, I can't. Every day it was to get up in the morning and chop against that voice of I can't. And he did it every day for 12 years. So after 12 years, he like comes home, right? And he's like walking into town, and his wife Raquel is like sitting in the kitchen, and she's having a cup of coffee with the neighbor. And the neighbor's like, so are you like so over the fact that your husband's been gone for 12 years? And Raquel's like, no. If I had my way, he'd be gone for another 12. And Rabbi Akiva hears this through the window, and he's like, sounds good. And he heads back to yeshiva and starts learning for another 12 years. Go big or go home. So after 24 years of dedicated Torah study, Rabbi Akiva rolls back into town, okay, with 24,000 students, like you do, okay? In those 24 years, he converted himself from a basic illiterate person to one of the greatest rabbis that ever lived. In fact, Rabbi Akiva and his main 5 students are where we get most of the Torah we have today. Okay, I'm going to say that again because it's going to be important in about 4 minutes. Rabbi Akiva and his 5 students are where we get most of the Torah today. He is one of the greatest rabbis who ever lived. Okay, so he rolls into town with like 24,000 students, and everyone in town's like, oh my gosh, there's like a rabbi, oh my gosh, it's like really important, oh my gosh, like what's this, oh my gosh, right? And so basically the neighbor comes and knocks on Rachel's door, and they're like, yo, Rachel, your husband's home. And she's like, oh, I guess I'll go say hi. And the neighbor looks at her and is like, are you gonna wear that? And Rachel's like, don't worry, I think he'll recognize me, right? So Rachel goes out, and there's this huge crowd, and she's like standing on the edge of the crowd, and she's like, hey, honey, hi, right? And one of the yeshiva students comes up and is like, excuse me, ma'am, there's a really important rabbi over here. I'm gonna need you to step back. Excuse me, ma'am. And Rabbi Akiva comes up and taps the guy on the shoulder, brings his wife, Rachel, into the center of the crowd. And what he's about to say is going to be your third key to success. What he says in Hebrew is, Sheli v'shelachem shelah. Sheli, everything that is mine. V'shelachem, everything that belongs to all of you, shelah, is hers. And here's your third key to success. Your third key to success is together we rise. What Rabbi Akiva was saying was, every single thing I have, everything that I have accomplished, every piece of Torah that I know, every letter that I know, everything that I have, and everything all 24,000 of you have, because you learned it from me, all of this belongs to her. You see, without someone believing in us, and here's the kicker, saying something about what they see in us, telling us about our potential, very few people ever get started. That I voice is way too loud. Remember when I said 4 minutes ago that most of the Torah we have today comes from Rabbi Akiva and his 5 students? He's one of the most important rabbis that ever lived. That means that according to Rabbi Akiva himself, most of the Torah we have today is because of one woman who saw potential and said something about it. You see, it's not enough just to see the potential in people around you. You also have to say something, right? We're all sitting here in these echo chambers of I can't, and I'm not good enough, not smart enough. And all we need is a voice from the outside saying, I see you. You know what? Your art is incredible. Don't give up. You could totally kill this master's program. You are going to be the world's greatest doctor, nurse, speech pathologist, like, I don't know, sidewalk artist. You are incredible. Your photography is stunning. You are an amazing listener. You have so much potential. We need somebody to see that in us and say something about it. Okay, so I told you, Jewish class, right? Lots of stories. Here's one last story from my life. Okay, once upon a time, I used to live in Mexico City, and I was an English teacher at a day school. And I was in my Jewish journey, and I was kind of like trying to figure things out a little bit, and so I used to go to classes. And one time, I'm waiting for a class to start outside the Sparty, like in Mexico City, and because it was 2007, I was outside on the balcony smoking a cigarette, like you do. Okay, so I'm out on the balcony having a cigarette, and all of a sudden this like rabbi dude sticks his head out, and he's like, excuse me, do you speak English? And I'm like, yes. And he's like, excuse me, do you speak Spanish? And I'm like, yes. And he's like, listen, I'm about to give a class in here, and I don't actually speak any Spanish, but I want to say something so they'll think I'm cool. Like I want to like say a little Spanish phrase. Could you teach me a phrase in Spanish? And I was like, okay. So I taught him how to say like, I don't speak Spanish, but I'm a really nice guy. Okay, like, no hablo español, pero soy buenísimo, right? So, like, we get to chatting or whatever, and then, like, that's it. I go in, he gives his class, cool. Couple days later, I'm waiting for another class that I go to, and as of course, once again, outside, smoking a cigarette, right? And guess who rolls up? Same rabbi. And he's like, wait, you're Ayelet, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, Ayelet, what are you doing with your life? And I'm like, doing my job, friends, living my very best life over here. And he's like, listen, Ayelet, I really feel like you need to go to Israel and dedicate yourself to some full-time Torah study. And I'm like, cool, no, I'm good. I'm like, that's really sweet, but like, I'm good. He's like, no. I really feel like you need to go to Israel, dedicate yourself to full-time Torah study, and then I think you need to become a Jewish educator. I think you need to become a Torah educator. And I was like, seriously, no. And he's like, no, I see this. I see that you have this potential. You full-time Torah study and then become a Torah educator. And I'm like, really not interested, man. And he's like, okay, I'm going to give you my email. When you change your mind, you just send me an email. So I took this man's email, and I want you to understand, with this much intention of ever emailing him, 0 intention of ever emailing this human. Okay? And then time passes. And then my mom got sick. And I moved home to take care of my mom through chemo. And when I did, it shook me up a lot and made me start to question a lot of stuff in my life. And when my mom went into remission, I was like, you know what? I kind of want to go to Israel. And I don't know how, but I dug that email out of somewhere. And I sent him this email being like, hi, Rabbi, I'm sure you don't remember me, but I'm thinking about going to Israel. A day later, I get a response that says, hi, Ayelet, how are you? You need to apply to this program. And I'm like, okay. So I go to the website and I go check it out, and I email him back and I'm like, Rabbi, I need like 2 letters of reference to apply to this program. And he emails me back and he says, don't worry, I'll write both of them. And he did. He literally wrote both letters of reference. And somehow I get accepted into this program, right? And so then I like go start looking for flights to Israel. And flights to Israel were $1,000 of money I did not have. right? I'd been living with my mom. I had not been working. I did not have $1,000 just chilling. So I sent an email back and I'm like, listen, Rabbi, thanks for everything, but I'm going to stay around here for a while. I'm going to work. I'm going to save up some money because, you know, my flights are a little outside the budget right now. And I'll let you know when I'm coming. I get an email back with one line. Watch your mailbox. A week later, I got a check in the mail for $1,000 with a note that says, see you in Israel. So I came to Israel. And I went and I learned for the very first time. And I sat down and I had my mind blown because I knew that the texts were interesting. I knew that Torah was interesting, but I had no idea the depth and the complexity and the relevance. It was so relevant and so fascinating and so incredible, and I got hooked. And so I just kept learning. And then I got married and we decided to move to Israel. And then I just kept learning. I worked a bunch of random jobs. I sold paintings in Mea Shearim. I worked as an insurance secretary. I worked as an online assistant, but I kept learning always, always in the evenings, at night. And then finally, 8 years after I moved to Israel, I got a job at Neve Yerushalayim as a Torah teacher. And my first week on campus, I like go walking down the hill and I go to like the dining hall. And who do I see tucking into a salad but that exact same rabbi? And I like walk up and I'm like, hi, Rabbi Nissel. Okay, so the rabbi was actually Rav Menachem Nissel. He's like world famous. I had no idea, okay? So I'm like, Rabbi Nissel. And he looks up and he's like, Ayelet, what are you doing here? And I'm like, Rabbi, I work here now. And he goes, oh, what are you doing? And I said, no, Rabbi. I teach here now. And he looks down at his salad and his eyes get like a little teary. And he looks up at me and he says, see, I knew you could do it. Now, Rabbi Nissel didn't make my story, but Rabbi Nissel began my story. I am only where I am today because someone saw potential in me when I didn't even see it and said something about it. And really, let's be honest, put his money where his mouth was. He believed in me. You see, this is what success is all about. It's not how smart you are. It's about how hard are you willing to work. And when it comes to whatever dream you have, whatever you want to be successful in, you are going to have to put in the hours. You are going to have to Rabbi Akiva this, okay? You are going to have to put in the hard work of every single day, chipping away at that voice that says you can't, chipping your way out of your comfort zone, chipping your way away from the status quo. You're going to have to put in a lot of hard work. Nobody did this, like, nobody taught me this Torah on my, like, I had to sit there and learn it, and it was hard. But I kept going because by the way, I'm not at my 10,000 hours yet, so watch me. Let's see where I get, right? So, like, I had to put in the hard work. But you know what? Even if we put in the Rabbi Akiva hours, we need a Rachel. We need someone to see our potential and to tell us about it. We need someone to believe in us. So ladies, when it comes to success, whatever your dream is, whatever you want to be successful at, you need to Rabbi Akiva this, okay? We need to go big or go home. You need to put in the effort. But on the other hand, you need to be a Rachel for everyone in your life. You have friends. You have family. Maybe you have partners. Please God, one day you'll have kids. And you need to be the person that sees the potential in them, and here's the kicker, says something about it. Your friend who's an incredible photographer, you don't know what's going on in her head. It's telling her all the time that she's terrible. You need to speak up and say, girl, you are incredible. You're your art is amazing. You've got to keep doing this. You've got a friend who's fighting her way through a really hard academic program. You need to tell her, you've got this. I believe in you. You're going to be the world's greatest ophthalmologist, gynecologist, anthromologist, epidemiologist ever, man. You've got this. You need to be the Rachel for people in your life. You need to see their potential for them and tell them about it. When it comes to success, it's on you to be Rabbi Akiva, but it's also on you to be Rachel. Because remember, the greatest things never happen without that voice to get us started. So 3 keys to success, ladies. It's diligence, not intelligence. You've got to put in the effort and look around you, because together we rise. Success comes when we help each other step into that new future. And that's it. Hold on, chat. Hi, Ayelet. So you got to go to Israel. Where did you stay? I went to a place called Sharim. That was where I went to. I went to SEM, basically. And I went to a SEM called Sharim, and I was there for 6-7 months as a single person. And then as I was married, every time I went on maternity leave, I'd show up back at SEM and just keep learning. Sometimes it's really hard if you're on the encouraging side and the other person is on the accepting your encouragement side. And not really very reciprocal. And it's hard. It's hard to be that for someone. So you've got to kind of balance. I think everything in life is about hitting the balance, the sweet spot of balance, right? Like, it's great to be encouraging to someone, but you've got to make sure you've got your team too, right? You got to find a high friend. Seriously, this is like your homework. If you have homework from this class, find a high friend, right? Find someone who will do that for you. And the best of these relationships are where you get to do it for each other, where it's reciprocal, right? Like, girl, I'm going to hype you up about, your incredible Instagram, and you're going to hype me up about my ability to like get into this master's program or whatever it is, right? Like, the best are when they're reciprocal. If it's not, then like, we got to have a balance. But one of the most incredible things I think is you tell yourself, people succeed in groups, right? Someone else's success never touches mine. In fact, success is contagious. If someone else is successful around me, it'll probably make me more successful, right? I think if competition, if you're in the same field as someone, is a real thing, but it doesn't help anybody to be competitive. So if you just always, whenever that voice comes up being like, she's being successful, be like, great, because people succeed in groups. And whenever she's successful, I'll probably be more successful. So I'm going to continue to be encouraging, and I'm not going to end up being jealous. Like, and if you've got a person who's like kind of a vacuum in your life, well, that sucks. Get it? Okay, so then you've got to, like make sure that there's balance in your relationships. Maybe like ask like, hey man, could you also encourage me occasionally? I really need I need somebody to hype me up for this, or just find somebody who does that. So anyway, hope that helps. How do you find a balance with an odd number of roommates? I feel like you're being, oh girl, be nice. I find being nice and positive really usually attractive to get more nice, positive people in your life. Like, the law of attraction works. So it's, or just straight up ask, like, hey man, I need, and it's kind of seems nebby, right? And their voice in your head's gonna be like, if you ask people to be nice to you, if you ask people to like encourage you, like, you're a nerd. But like, if you just say like, hey man, I could really use a cheer squad right now. Like, I'm really doubting myself. Could you give me like could you just like, hype me, dude? Could you just like, and then most people, if they're normal, will be like, oh yeah, no problem. Like, you're awesome. You're great. I think you're fabulous, right? Like, you got to ask for what you need and try to just put out good vibes in the universe. Like, and usually that's what you'll get back, generally.